watching NextSportStar. Please stand.
And welcome back to In the Cage with Bards here on NextSportStar.com. And joining me now, I have the privilege of speaking with the UFC's Director of Operations for Canada, Australia, and New Zealand. His portfolio is expanding radically. The one, the only Tom Wright back on the program. How are you doing today, sir?
Hey, Colin, I'm doing great. How are you?
Very well, thank you. I appreciate you taking the time. I know you're a busy guy. And we just had the UFC 161 opening press conference in Winnipeg. Another new market for the UFC and another continued step in Canadian domination for the brand.
I don't know if I call it Canadian domination, but we're excited to have an opportunity to take the UFC and our athletes and our event into the fifth market in Canada. When we were in Calgary last year for the July show, UFC 149, that was our fourth, and this will make it 5 cities, 5 provinces, and for the 13th show, we're pretty excited about going to Winnipeg. It's a great sports town, as you know, home of the Jets, home of the Bombers, and we're very excited about June the 15th.
And putting together a real A-list pay-per-view card so far, not just for the men, of course, with Rashad and Hendo, but with the women's fight added as well. Rosie Sexton and Alexis Davis. Alexis Davis, obviously, a proud Ontario product, and Rosie Sexton, a real legend in women's mixed martial arts. I mean, the reception has got to be just great on the ground here.
The reception has been terrific, and I was making the point during the press conference that actually, this whole card is an amazing card. Once you get past the title bout, at least for the interim bantamweight championship between Barao and Wineland, which I think is going to be a great fight. I mean, Hennen is obviously the number one ranked behind Dominic Cruz, and Eddie Wineland is ranked number 4. Mm-hmm. It's almost like it's a light heavyweight tournament. I mean, we've got number 4, number 5, number 6, and number 7 fighting. Yeah. Hendo's fighting Rashad. Hendo's number 4, and Evans is number 6. And then you've got Little Nog and Shogun, number 5 and number 7, respectively. Brazilian showdown. And you know what? You take a look at it. I mean, we've got 2 former Pride champions on this card. You got 2 former Strikeforce champions. You've got 2 former UFC light heavyweight champions. You've got a WEC champion in Hennen Barao. And Eddie Wineland. You've got there's a total of 24 UFC career fights have headlined on this card, and on top of that we've got 7 Canadians. So on the ground it's been received really, really well. Ticket sales have been amazing. I haven't got today's reports, but I still think there might be a couple of hundred tickets left to sell, but whatever it is, it's we couldn't be happier.
Yeah, it really looks like a great card and a great gift to the Canadian prairie folk, that's for sure. Sir, another topic I want to bring up with you today is the unfortunate death of Felix Pablo Elochukwu of Hamilton, who died after taking part in an unregulated amateur fight in Michigan. Your comments at the presser in Winnipeg seem to indicate that a tragedy like this underscores the need for more regulation everywhere.
Well, it really does. And, first and foremost, we always have to, step back and remember just how tragic this kind of thing is. And our hearts go out for Pablo's family, and because, clearly, he was pursuing a dream, and everybody wants to have that kind of opportunity. But there's a whole bunch of reasons why we as an organization, have always run towards regulation, and why we as an organization, spend a lot of time making sure that regulation is in place, because there's just so many considerations when you're putting on a mixed martial arts competition that you want to make sure are in place, and we've heard it many times. You just don't know whether Pablo had a pre-existing medical condition, and if this event had been regulated, we would have known that, because he would have been required to have mandatory pre-fight medical testing. Yeah. And not only pre-fight medical testing for things like doing an MRI and MRA, doing particular tests for hepatitis and those kinds of different things, but you also want to make sure that the match is properly balanced. I don't know whether or not who Pablo was fighting, whether it was a fair fight or was it a well balanced fight. Who knows? And was the referee properly trained? I don't know, and I can't comment, but in a regulated environment, that would happen.
Absolutely.
Was there the proper EMTs on site? Was there an ambulance on site? All these kinds of things are fundamentals to a regulated sport, and that's why we push so hard for it. So I feel terribly about what happened to Pablo, but in the end, as you pointed out, it underscores the need for regulation.
I agree that every event should be regulated. I had a large discussion with South Dakota State Representative Steve Hickey on this program about that very topic when he was against it. I agree, regulation everywhere is the way to go. My question to you is this, sir. Is there such a thing as over-regulation?
Well, you know what? I think that when you say, it depends how you define overregulation. I think in the end, you want to make sure that there is a specific set of requirements, a certain rigor that is put into place that will ensure that the health and safety of the athletes is protected. Mm-hmm. I can tell you, from an organizational point of view, whatever regulations are put in place in any jurisdiction that we go to, we at the UFC actually will typically go beyond that. So if they're looking for two octagon-side medical doctors, chances are we'll have three. Mm-hmm. We may only call for one ambulance, but chances are we'll call for two. When you say can you have overregulation? Depends on how you define overregulation.
I'll tell you how I define it, sir, because I don't know if you're aware of this or not, but the situation here for MMA in Ontario, other than UFC, can really only be described as dire. The fighter medicals cost thousands of dollars and include multiple CT scans a year, something that is recommended against by doctors because of radiation concerns. On the promotion side, promoters have gone on record saying that it costs about $50,000 to put on a show here. That's before you pay one fighter. That's before you run one ad. AFC promoter Darren Owen from the Aggression Fighting Championships even said in a public forum that OAC Commissioner Ken Hayashi outright laughed at him for wanting to put on a show here. My question to you, sir, is this. Would you agree that if Ontario had an even remotely reasonable MMA system in place, fighters would not be forced to take unregulated and dangerous fights elsewhere?
Well, I don't know I would agree with that statement. I can tell you that all of the work that we've done with the OAC has been fine. You're talking about if you're talking about a cost of putting on a show, that's not a question of regulation. That's a financial issue. I think about regulations. I'm talking about making sure that the appropriate medical requirements are in place. We work very closely to make sure that some of the potentially harmful standards of continual testing for CT scans and those kinds of things are properly balanced with the need to protect the athlete. We actually have had some conversations and have started some conversations with the OAC on making some changes to the regulations that are currently in place to address some of the things you're talking about. But when it comes to the financial issues that you're chatting about, that's totally different. I don't know what those situations are. We don't approach it from a financial point of view because our sense is that whatever costs are necessary to protect the athletes will absorb those costs, and I don't know specifically what about what has been said to other promoters because I wasn't privy to that.
So the fact that the sport is effectively being choked out here, to use an MMA term, at the grassroots level, is that not really concern for the UFC then, because they can afford to pay no matter what the commission fees are? It's a lot like the situation was in Vancouver. You must know this, that the only show on the docket in Ontario for 2013 is a UFC show. But because UFC can pay these things and still go along with the program, is the fact that there's no other shows in a province of 13 million people, is that not a concern for the company?
Well, to be honest with you, I didn't know that we're the only show that's on the docket. I don't regularly go onto their site and check out what else is going on. I can tell you that after the sport was sanctioned in 2011 or 2010, I guess, and the regulations were put into place. That first year, I think we had one show, and there were probably close to 20 that happened in this province. So I don't know. I haven't checked the calendars, so I don't. I'm obviously concerned about how a sport grows, how a sport is provided with an opportunity to develop. But all I can tell you is things that we're doing, which I've relayed to you to make sure that the sport is reasonably and properly regulated here.
With the UFC, and this is the last question because I know that you've got to go, you've got another conference call, but would the UFC consider sending someone like yourself, who's worked with all levels of government, or like Mr. Ratner, to Ontario to work with the OAC to come up with a system that puts reasonable regulation and reasonable fees here in Ontario, keeps our fighters from ever having to seek out unregulated and dangerous fights ever again?
We've already made that offer. We've already made that offer to the Ontario government, and it has been received well. And we're in the process of working with the legislative side of the Ministry of Consumer Services, who obviously is a ministry where the commission is housed. And we've already started that process, and we've already enumerated the changes that we feel are necessary. I'd be lying to you if I told you that government things move fast. I don't have to tell you that. You know governments don't move quickly.
Yeah.
So, we're moving forward and doing our part to try to make sure that what you're talking about is put into place.
Well, we can only hope it happens sooner rather than later, because I would love to be able to sit here and say that a tragedy like what happened to Pablo will never happen again. But Tom, I really appreciate you stopping by the program today and giving us some of your time and your expertise, sir.
My pleasure, anytime.
All right. We'll be back here on In the Cage with Bards on NextSportStar.com right after this.
You make me whole.